Well, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure. We just said when does it turn from afternoon to evening, so we'll just cover them both and say it all. My name is Jackie Kraftjack. I will be interviewing Greg today with some questions that were submitted by employees of IFMC businesses. So we're going to jump in. These were submitted ahead of time, but they're really great questions. So Greg, welcome, first of all.
Good afternoon.
Oh, afternoon. All right. He's still on the afternoon timeline. But I wanted to say, so before we ask the questions, I did want to point out, so we did tell everybody that your questions, you can submit them, but we would say who submitted them. But I wanted to mention that Katie Monroe of Marishred, she actually, they got together as a team and submitted 5 questions. So when I say Katie or Marishred, it was the whole team. And then the other question we'll share in a second from Scott Spomer. But I also wanted to share something up front that Katie and team also submitted without being asked to. This was neat that they did this. They shared some of their favorite things about the IFMC. So I just want to share those before we get into the questions. They like that people answer the phones. So it's not a, you get a recording, press this number or that number for this or that. They like that the IFMC does not scrimp on software. They have really great tools. They like that there's growth ability and bonus sharing. And they also appreciate that the company culture is not stagnant and each day brings new opportunities. So I thought that was pretty cool. Greg, great leadership in those areas and leading to those things. So thought we'd send with that, but are you ready for some questions?
I am ready.
All right, so we're actually going to start with a question from Scott Spomer. And he says, why has the bonus distribution schedule not moved back to spring versus it being in October? So I'm going to let you answer that. If you want to give history or whatever, it's up to you, but I'm going to let you take it from here.
Sure. Well, the current schedule just works out nice because it smooths the workload out for mainly the accounting team, but also the leadership team. And in the early part of the year, there's usually a surge of work related to tax prep and trying to get all that finished. When that's done, typically there's some work that's backed up that we need to catch up on. And so it smooths the workload considerably if we move it to after summer as opposed to in the early year or early in the year, or even in the summer when, of course, folks like to take vacation.
So a follow-up question to that from me would be, why wasn't that realized before when it was distributed in the spring? Why did anyone say, hey, this is a lot of work for the finance people? Can we move this back?
I think that was questioned, and because that was the habit, we just continued with that. Of course, over the years, things did get a little bit more complicated, partly because regulations got more complicated, partly because we were growing, the number of business units were growing, the team was getting more efficient, but when the team gets more efficient, that causes less people to need to do more work when there's a surge. And efficiency and the government do not align.
Want to talk about that for 3 hours?
That could be a long night.
Yes, it could, and I would end up probably angry by when we get off the phone. So, all right, so let's move into the questions from the Amerishred team submitted by Katie. So the first one is, they want to know what accomplishment you are most proud of.
Marrying Jan.
Aw, did you tell Jan to listen today?
No, I didn't.
Oh, well,
But
I'm gonna have to send this to her.
There's no doubt. I mean, that has been absolutely a huge impact on me personally. I'm not sure that you can really count that as an accomplishment, but pretty much everything beyond that, she's been a large influence on, and so I really can't take credit for too many of the accomplishments. On a side note, yesterday was our 40th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, then why are you not calling from like a, vacation spot somewhere?
Well, because we actually spent a good part of the day yesterday in the Big Cypress Preserve looking for pythons,
Oh,
Florida panthers, black bears, and alligators. And all we saw were alligators, but it
oh,
was
that's
fun.
very cool though. Yes, very
Hmm.
cool. Can you name just one thing that a positive influence more specifically that she has had on you?
Well, that's interesting. If we look at hedgehogs and we look at how my hedgehog compares with hers, they're very different, but she is very, very clever, very supportive, and really enables me to focus on what I really love, and that's solving problems, helping people. And so it's just been a very good match.
Very
If
cool.
I do, if I do look at other accomplishments, though, my guess is that the question probably was asked with maybe more of a business intent. And if I look at what have I really accomplished that I'm really proud of from a business perspective, that really is kind of a hard question because there really isn't much I've done that hasn't involved a lot of other team members. And but if we bake that into the mix, I'm just really proud to be part of the IFMC team, really proud of what we've accomplished and what my role has been in facilitating that, if you will. And really, I view my role more as removing friction from what people are trying to do business wise than actually doing things that are creating direct value.
Awesome. So the next question, I'm glad the answer you had for the first one was for that one and not for the second question, because the second question is, what is the worst mistake you ever made?
Well, there again, if I answer that personally first, it was the rather sudden impact of a motorcycle accident where that turned out okay. And I can actually even cite some maybe positives that came out of that for me personally. But boy, that could have been really serious. I ended up with a fractured neck, totally separated left shoulder. The cartilage between my rib cage halves was broken, and my left knee was pretty banged up. And the doctor did say if my neck had the fracture in my neck had moved just a little bit more, I wouldn't have been able to breathe, or I would have lost control of my diaphragm, and that would have been lights out.
So,
So
well, that
go ahead.
that was was that directly related to a error on the rider's part, or was it a complete accident?
Uh, there's nobody else to blame other than the guy
Mm-hmm.
that was riding the motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so no, I mean, there was no. I can't pin it right down to one specific action other than I was in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
Okay. So let's look at that from a business perspective then. Kind of the worst mistake you ever made in the business realm.
Well, and this is partly personal, partly business, but not having enough budgeted for a rainy day fund and almost going bankrupt. And that was really a combination of overestimating my competencies and underestimating the number of things that can go wrong, and just not preparing for that. And again, that wasn't a sudden thing. It was just a stack up of
Mm-hmm.
events that ended up with could have been pretty serious consequences. But once again, those things have that stress, that tension really has what is known as post-traumatic growth. So a lot of people hear about post-traumatic stress syndrome or post-traumatic stress disorder, and that is a real thing. Post-traumatic growth is a real thing as well. And having the insights that come from those sorts of close calls is really valuable.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming this wasn't something that happened last year. This was many years ago.
Yeah, yeah, that was back in the mid 80s when we had just come off of, or we were just coming off of some years with some real inflation. So the economy was in pretty tough shape. We had the fire at 1995 East Hamilton Road, and uh, it turns out at that point, Ron was seriously thinking about quitting, and then I had my motorcycle accident, and all those things kind of piled up at once, and that resulted in some stress. Plus, my dad had passed away at age 69, uh, right around that time as well. So,
That was
matter of
a
fact, he would be 107 today. It would
Oh,
be his
wow.
birthday today.
Well, happy heavenly birthday to him. That was a difficult time then. Lots of stressors kind of outside of your control. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, definitely.
yeah. So this next question might have already been sort of answered, but maybe not. What was, and this is still from the Amerishred team, what was the most difficult thing that you've had to overcome?
Oh, that definitely that period. Uh, and maybe I guess it would be a toss up between that and the 9-month strike. And of course, we did a whole equipped live session on the strike and that learning experience. But yeah, this was probably tougher. But again, I look back at that and the fact that we were able to weather that and come out of that with some experience, some wisdom, turned out to be a really good thing.
I mean, that's how we learn best is through adversity. So as long as you let that lesson happen, I think that's great. You can grow from those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna keep going. We have two questions left, and we're gonna get to them. I hate to leave just one. So there is a relatively high retention rate in the IFMC, and the question is, what do you credit that high employee retention rate to?
I'm not sure how to prioritize these things, but certainly the IFMC values that we have set the stage for a lot of good things because the folks in the IFMC behave within those values and within that value system. And for those that haven't read the book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey, that explains a lot. And when team members trust each other, you can move pretty fast and things can get accomplished pretty quickly. I think that combined with the small companies and the small teams where the team members all have an opportunity to see what's coming in the door, see what their contribution is to the materials, to the teamwork, and what goes out the door, I think that's really powerful too. And so my guess is it's that combination of the value system, the ability to see what's coming in, what's going out, and the impact that they can have that probably makes that pretty rewarding to work in that environment and feel like you've accomplished something.
I would say you're pretty right about that stuff. And so the last question that was submitted by the Amerishred team through Katie, and we kind of laughed about this, but the question is, what do you do to recharge, relax, and get away from it all other than just working more?
Sleep?
Sleep. I mean, that's valuable.
Well, and that's really it. I mean, because I enjoy solving problems for people, and if you look again at the hedgehog, really that's how I got involved in business in the first place. And I was doing that. I was solving problems for people just because I enjoyed doing it. I didn't really realize that that was a business, and that turns out to be very rewarding as well. And so, since that's a passion of mine and that overlaps pretty well with people that have problems that are willing to write checks, that's the economic engine. And so quite frankly, I mean, if I sit down and try to just play a game, let's say play Monopoly or whatever, I fall asleep. I mean, it doesn't even compare to the real thing. So I, I sleep.
So are you saying looking for pythons and bear and alligators, did you sleep through that or did you actively participate?
No, there are certain things that you need to do to accommodate the other team members. And so I stayed awake, and that
Okay,
was
that's
fun.
good. I'm sure it was a good time, I'm sure. So, all right. Well, those are the questions that were submitted. We are at our typical 17-minute mark. Here's what I'll say for those who are watching. Well, I haven't asked Greg this yet, but I think we'll still take questions, right? If anyone wants to submit any additional ones, we're open to that, right, Greg?
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, just email them to me. You guys get the email from me, so you have access to that. Happy to take those. We did decide the next Equip Live will be May 20th, so we'll be getting that set up and everyone will receive an email regarding that. Greg, is there anything else that you'd like to say at this point?
Just want to thank everyone for helping me be proud of my accomplishments, and hope we can do a lot more.
Awesome. Well, Greg, as always, we appreciate your time. We know you're really busy. We appreciate that you stayed awake through these Equip Live sessions. And we will see everybody in about 3 weeks, May 20th. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.